The first presentation is one from Thurston Young. Thurston Young is a collection metadata analyst working at the British Library, and he currently serves as the UK representative to the MARC Advisory Committee, and he also serves as member of the UK Committee on RDA. So Thurston, when you want.
Hi everybody. Hi Roberto. If it's okay, I'm going to try to share my screen now.
Okay.
Okay. I can't seem to share my screen just now.
Thurston, do you want me to share instead?
Yeah, because my share doesn't seem to be enabled.
Let me see. You should be able to, but I'll share instead.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Okay. Can you see my slides there now?
Yeah.
Hello?
We can see them, yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Now you stopped sharing now.
Can you see my slides?
We see your slides, yes.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. So RDA and Mark 21 development. I'm going to provide an update on the work of the Mark RDA working group. So earlier this year, at the May meeting of EURIG, I provided an update on the implementation of RDA in a Mark 21 context through the work of the Mark RDA working group. This update will address the following areas. The Mark RDA working group's charge, its schedule, membership, focus, progress since May 2021, ongoing work, wider community engagement, and some learning points. So in terms of the charge, by way of background, a Mark RDA working group was set up at the end of 2019 to consider the issues around implementing changes which arose from the RDA Toolkit restructure and redesign project in Mark 21. A similar group was formed in 2008 to look at Mark 21 changes which were required to implement RDA in its original form. The Mark RDA working group's charge is as follows. To evaluate the scope and impact of the extensions to RDA arising from the RDA 2019 revision in relation to Mark 21, to identify and prioritise possible changes to Mark 21 to support compatibility with the RDA extensions and ensure effective data exchange into the future, and to prepare discussion papers and proposals for the Mark Advisory Committee. So this was the group's original schedule of work, running from the end of 2019 to the beginning of 2021. And that schedule has since been extended to allow for another year to run until 2022. A further extension may be necessary in order to complete the works, the group's business. And so far, the group has completed 4 cycles of business, from submitting discussion papers, following these up with proposals, and seeing changes published in Mark 21. In terms of the Mark RDA working group's membership, It's made up of various key stakeholders across the community. Previously, we've had Ed Cartus, the RSC Wider Community Engagement Officer, representing RSC, and Sally McCallum, representing the Network Development Mark Standards Office at Library of Congress. For this latest round of meetings, we'll also be joined by Charlene Chu, who is the RSC Wider Community Engagement Officer-elect. We also have members of the Mark Steering Group representing the British Library, Library of Congress, Deutsche Nationalbibliothek, Library and Archives Canada, and we also have vendors represented from Index Data and OCLC. And lastly, we also have specialist librarians represented, the audiovisual community, the cartographic community, music, serials, and rare books and manuscripts. In terms of the Mark RDA Working Group's focus, as before, its frame of reference for making changes to Mark 21 continues to align with the following criteria: new RDA entities, concepts and vocabulary encoding schemes, choice of format to implement the change, granularity and consistency of change, and feasibility and utility of change. In terms of the new RDA entities, we're talking about the RDA entity, gnomon, agent, collective agent, place and time span. In terms of new concepts, we're looking at manifestation statements, representative expressions, diachronic works, and data provenance. Vocabulary encoding schemes, we're looking at things like carrier extent unit, extension plan, recording sources, type of binding. And also some existing RDA vocabulary encoding schemes which hitherto weren't supported in Mark, including mode of issuance, aspect ratio designation, illustrative content, sound content, form of musical notation. Then in terms of the choices we have to make, they are around whether changes should be made in the authority format, bibliographic format, another format, a combination of different formats. In terms of granularity and consistency, we're looking at the scope for granularity encoding, whether that needs to be at the record level, field level, and also scope for consistency of coding, whether it can be made equivalent field by field or equivalent format by format. Feasibility and utility, the possibility of change within format constraints. For example, is available coding still available? Existing record models, thinking about the context of NACO, BibCo, the provider neutral model, and the helpfulness of change to end users, for example, researchers, programmers, etc., and collection management, such as functions covering inventory control, workflow efficiency, etc. Coming on to progress, just a little bit of background again. So in Mark Update 31, December 2020, we had new coding introduced for manifestation statements in the field 881, extension plan in the field 335. Mark Update 32, June 2021, we had new coding for the mode of issuance in field 334. Coming at the end of this year, we will have new encoding for the type of binding element in field 340 subfield $L. And just quickly going through some examples here. So we have an example here of coding for a manifestation statement in the 881 field. Some examples of values for extension plan recorded in the 335. Some examples of values for mode of issuance recorded in the 334. And last but not least, the values, some of the values we can expect to record now in the $340L once that is published at the end of this year. In terms of the asterisk beside the MARC code there, the source code for this vocabulary, that code is currently pending approval by the MARC Standards Office. So hopefully that shall be introduced to the genre form code list in the near future. Now I want to say something about ongoing work. So the MARC Advisory Committee continues to narrow down its preferred criteria for better supporting data provenance information in the formats. Having rejected the suggestion for defining a new format to carry data provenance information at the beginning of 2021, the summer meeting of MAC decided that two further options should be discounted: expansion of field 883 and definition of a non-standard subfield code. The former was rejected on the basis of difficulties associated with pairing multiple 883 fields with other fields and in the same record using subfield $8, field link and sequence number. The latter was rejected on the basis that it would break the existing MARC 21 background and principles, which only allow for the use of lowercase characters A to Z and 0 to 9 as subfield data element identifiers. MAC's preference was to further explore the potential for using subfield $7 or another subfield where subfield 7 is unavailable, in combination with code lists for flagging categories of data provenance and subfield specific linkage within the same string. The MARC Advisory Committee also considered the options for better accommodating representative expression information within the formats for the first time in the summer. 6 options were presented: to add expression coding to the authority formats in cases where it is currently unavailable, and use it in combination with field 075, type of entity, to flag representative expression as opposed to other kinds of expression data. To add field 075, type of entity, to the bibliographic format and use it in combination with expression coding to flag representative expression as opposed to other kinds of expression data in the bibliographic format. Expand field 381, other distinguishing characteristics of work or expression, to carry both expression and representative expression information. To create a new field 387, specifically for the purpose of carrying representative expression information. And to add indicator values to existing fields which carry expression information to distinguish representative expressions. Or to use a combination of one or more of the aforementioned methods to record representative expression information. MAC's preference indicated that there was little appetite for adding expression coding to the authority format or for field 075 in the bibliographic format. More interest was expressed in expanding the 381, defining a new 387 field, or adding indicator values to an existing field. Of the possible combined approaches available, defining a new 387 field for everything apart from field 382 for medium of performance was a popular choice. And in terms of ongoing work, lastly, the MARC Advisory Committee considered the case for amending the existing definition of field 507 in the bibliographic format, scale note for graphic material, so that it aligns with the definition of scale which is present in the new RDA toolkit. It was agreed that the definition of field 507 could be aligned, but that examples of application would be useful by way of illustration. Now a little bit about wider community engagement. So On that front, Mark update 31, December 2020, new coding was agreed to record aspect ratio designation in the 345 subfield $D, illustrative content in the 340 subfield P. Mark update 32 included new coding to support recording of sound content in the 340 $I, and format of notation of musical notation in the 348 $C. And we've got some examples here. Aspect ratio designation, values for that. Illustrative content, values for that. Sound content, and also form of musical notation. Learning points. So some of the learning points remain the same from what I've reported on previously. And these are messages which the MARC RDA working group has sought to emphasise and will continue to emphasise in its ongoing work. New coding is not mandatory to implementation of RDA. There is RSC liaison to provide advice and assistance. Feedback from MAC may contribute to RDA developments, and RDA will not adapt to MARC 21 record structures if these break its relationships to the LRM. In terms of other learning points, again, these are ones that I've reported on last time for the most part, in terms of the tension that sometimes arises between making structural changes and minimal disruption. Equally between closed and open world applications for changes. The issues regarding RDA constraints versus community preference, and coding in principle versus implementation in practice. One additional learning point I've added to the end there is legacy requirement versus anticipated benefit. And this is evidenced most recently in terms of the case for expanded coverage of data provenance, which has been made stronger by the German community's argument that it is already recording data provenance at a highly granular level using local encoding, for example, script, language, and scope of validity of metadata. And this will have a bearing on the next paper that is brought to the MARC Advisory Committee by the MARC RDA Working Group looking at data provenance. And that ends my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Thurston, for for your presentation. I think we have some questions here.
Okay.
Sabina is okay.
Sorry, I was unmuted.
Sorry.
So, what was the reason for putting information about representative expression in the bibliographic format rather than the authority format?
I think there are a number of advantages to doing that. In terms of the preferences set out by MAC, the possibility of a new field, the 387, that wouldn't be confined to the bibliographic format. It could also be defined in the authority format. But a message that has been relayed to sort of the MARC Advisory Committee on previous occasions, and also with regard to representative expressions, is the fact that often institutions do not display authority data to their end users, and therefore it remains behind the scenes and unable to support functions such as catalog searches, facet searching, and things of that nature. So that is one major reason why it is desirable to display this kind of information in the bibliographic format. Yes, and one disadvantage of doing it solely in the authority format.
Thank you. The next question. I see there are no graphic people listed among your special material consultants. Yet some of the new uses of MARC involve still description. How does this feed into the working group?
Sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
I see there are no graphic people listed among your special material consultants, yet some of the new uses of MARC involve still image description. How does this feed into the working group?
Okay, in terms of, I think you said image description. We do have an OLAC representative on the MARC RDA working group, and they cover audiovisual issues. As regards the aspects of the new RDA that have been covered by the MARC RDA working group, none of those have looked at that type of material specifically. Although I did note under the wider community engagement section of the presentation that there have been changes in support of vocabulary encoding schemes for aspect ratio designation, and also the recording of controlled terms for illustrative content.
Thank you. No further questions so far for you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I was mute, sorry. Thurston, I have a quick and easy question. In the next MARC Advisory Committee meeting, this data provenance issue will come as a discussion paper or as a proposal?
We're anticipating that will be another discussion paper.
Okay.
That's a very good, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question for Thurston that came right now. So Thurston, Patriva is asking, will the RDA MARC working group do a mapping to LRM the way UniMARC is doing?
That is not within the current remit of the MARC RDA working group, no. Pat may be aware of the fact that there are mappings from RDA to MARC 21 within the RDA toolkit itself, but hitherto, so far as I'm aware, there have been no attempts to map MARC 21 to LRM or LRM to MARC 21.